Welcome to Blaze News, the mandate day 22. I'm Jill Savage. We're coming to you from the nation's capital once again. We were back here exactly 1 month ago, and right now, 1 month of the Trump administration feels like an entire term for other presidents. So let's go ahead and break down what has happened since we've been here exactly 1 month ago. Matthew Peterson, Chris Bedford here joining me. And guys, I look at this and we were promised shock and awe from the executive orders from the Trump team, and we have certainly gotten that and much more.
I think J.D. Vance said earlier today at CPAC that they have had more executive orders than CNN has viewers. And that's pretty fantastic, and actually might even be approaching the truth. And, you know, I admit this. I was skeptical of DOGE.
How dare you?
When DOGE started showing up, and Elon Musk was like, we have to be radicals for limited government, I was like, all right, Tea Party, no, we need to wield power to attack the left. That is what you need to do. Because I didn't think that DOGE was ever going to get nearly this far. I didn't think that they were going to deploy terror finance tracking software and nerds to find out where the NGOs are getting all their money through the left. I didn't realize, and I am a little butthurt in some way. I was talking to some reporters about this last night. They keep on saying DOGE uncovers, DOGE uncovers. And it's like, well, if you've been reading The Blaze, The Federalist, The Daily Caller, The Free Beacon, The Washington Examiner, we've been doing this for 10 years. All of these things have been finally laid out. But the fact that they're defunding it has been such a massive hit to what appeared to be a titan that could not be defeated, the billions of dollars in left-wing money. And you're like, where does this come from? Where does it come from? It came from my pocket. In your pocket, it turns out. It's amazing, and it turns out, I guess we're back to limited government conservatism again. Who knew?
Well, don't you think that one of the reasons that the reason it's so successful is because normally there's reason for cynicism on the part of Chris and anyone who's been watching this scene for a long time.
Because get rid of the Department of Education. Okay.
Oh yeah, well, I've heard that.
We've heard that before.
Since the Department of Education was born, we have heard that from Republicans, and it doesn't happen. I think Bill Bennett was going to do it, then he ran it, and he didn't shut it down at all. It kept on going. Usually it's all talk, no action. But more than that, when you have something like DOGE, it does sound like a gimmick. We've heard gimmicks over and over again, right? Some kind of outside agency is going to solve everything, and it sort of doesn't understand how politics works. But the difference was that executive order inserted DOGE into a pre-existing agency that was already doing digital services. And the genius of this was that it was thought out, that they really did think hard about how do you choke out the movement of money throughout the system. And everywhere you look in the shock and awe EOs and Elon, I'd say the three things that stick out for me in the 30 days. Everywhere you look, you see the result of people who have thought about this and thought about it before they started doing it.
I love that you pointed out. It's the Obama administration that created the entity that we now just refer to as DOGE. So it's almost like that beautiful little Achilles heel from the Obama administration trying to just take something and we're like, you know what? It's a good idea. We're going to flip that.
And Joe Biden creating the legal precedent for firing these people because he kicked Sean Spicer off of the Kennedy board. Like, who cares?
But I think that one of the most important relationships, without a doubt, is Elon and Trump. And we were talking a little bit about this last night on the show, but I want to get your take because this is something that is very interesting that you pointed out in one of our meetings earlier this week. Just the way that Donald Trump, in his first term, he never would have been a guy that's like, let me share the spotlight. Let me bring on this, young AI tech guy and just be here and be cool with him. The fact that Trump is now just sitting back and saying, you know what, I'll share the spotlight with you. This is fine. The collaboration and the relationships that have been built and what we've been able to see as all the results from this friendship and partnership is unprecedented.
Remember, back in the first term, both Trump and the media were able to tweak each other really easily. They could absolutely trigger. I remember, for example, the day that the Obamacare vote failed, that Mitch McConnell came out and announced it. All coverage across all networks was about Donald Trump tweeting about Mika's nose bleeding. And that's all anyone talked about. He could get the media to do whatever he wanted. At the same time, the media could often get Donald Trump to do things by saying, oh, this person's getting too big. This person thinks they're in charge. Boom, you're gone. And that has changed. The Donald Trump I saw in the Hannity interview sitting next to Elon Musk is a different person. And it shows you how much The bullet changed him. The 4 years in the wilderness changed him. The fact that he's actually proven himself in such a way. He always, one of the things was he wanted people to recognize how big the crowd was, how much he was actually liked. Well, he's come back. America lived through the alternative. He is the greatest comeback president in American history. Beats even Richard Nixon for the comeback kid. And he's proven it when he's won the popular vote. So I think that there's just a certain amount of him that may be at peace. He's also obviously in legacy mode. He's not ready to talk about it. I think he obviously got irritated when people said, "Is J.D. Vance your successor?" He's like, I'm in the third week of my second term.
Exactly.
But the way he was sitting there joking with Elon Musk, who was like obviously brilliant, but you know that people who are that smart and that weird must get irritating after a while. But they seem to be, they're buddies. It was like a buddy cop movie watching it, and that's something that's just completely changed. And he openly said, back to how I started this, they keep on trying to say Elon Musk is president, like it's going to bother me. They're trying to get me, trying to make me mad.
Yes.
But it's stupid, it's not working. The media is very dumb. And it's like, well, it did work for a couple of years, Mr. President, but not anymore. And it's just another example of what he always said, I'm going to get the smartest people. I'm going to get the toughest generals. I'm going to get the meanest guys. But the generals basically ran from him, and so did a lot of the smart people.
Oh, yeah.
There's a couple of them, they stand out, like Russ Vought, Stephen Miller. Now he's got a massive army of actually really smart people who are doing it, and he's built the administration that he said he ran on in 2016 and actually realized it. It kind of blows my mind.
I love that you say that. I mean, he is calling out the media and that tactic that they used against him successfully so many times. But at the same time, as you said, he can still move the media. He can still drop a Napoleon quote and watch the nuclear bomb go off and laugh,
Europe, you suck. Here's a Napoleon quote. Boom.
I love it. I just, again, these 30 days have been more entertaining than we even deserve at this point in time.
It's going to be so brutal.
It is.
The post-Trump age. I was so depressed the first few months of Joe Biden. I was like, do I have Biden derangement syndrome?
Legacy
the light is
media.
gone.
Legacy media was so sad when Trump was gone the first time. I can only imagine how this is all going to go for them after round two. Don't go anywhere, because when we come back, Chris Bedford will explain why too much transparency might be a bad thing for the White House, coming up next. And this part of the show is brought to you by Good Ranchers. You know that you'd rather have Good Ranchers than any of that imported meat that's out there in the grocery store, because Good Ranchers, you can trust them, and you know exactly where your food is coming from, and you can support American farms and ranches in the process. And they don't have any of the additives, any of the seed oils. It's just good, high quality protein straight from America. So go visit goodranchers.com. Use my code Jill now for $25 off your order. And with their New Meat New Year program, you can get free ground beef, chicken breast, or wild-caught salmon in your order for a year. It's code Jill at checkout. It's goodranchers.com. American meat delivered. Well, does the White House need to change its messaging? Chris Bedford says yes, and he wrote about this in his latest Beltway brief. So, Bedford, the Republicans are notorious for poor messaging, right? But we have so much winning going on, and the White House is leading the way in that.
Yes,
so why do they need to work on their communication?
And they've actually done largely an incredible job on messaging in a lot of different ways. My biggest fear was when the American people saw deportations, really saw them, they'd absolutely freak out. But then it turns out they're like, we're going to get Dr. Phil and go down to the MS-13 hideout. And Americans are like, this is great TV. Because remember, one of the horrible things about 2020 is they took cops from us. Mm-hmm. America likes cops. That was a good show. And the White House is doing that. They're doing a great job in communication. But sometimes they're saying the quiet part out loud. And this is particularly interesting for DOJ. The Deputy Acting Attorney General has a couple of times kind of put his foot in his mouth. One was, we're talking about the case of Eric Adams, the New York City mayor. He was prosecuted under trumped-up charges. The case is thin. The Washington Post knows the case is stupid and thin. The Wall Street Journal knows the case is stupid and thin. You'll hear it across the board. And it all came down after Eric Adams went after Joe Biden. So it's a politicized prosecution, evidence strongly suggests. Also, the Supreme Court has knocked those things down in the past. When the idiot governor of Virginia, former Republican, was prosecuted for corruption, I remember it was the classic case of Republican corruption. Democrats make billions of dollars in green subsidies, and Republicans get some vitamin supplements and get their porch stained and borrow rich guys' cars. But they tried to put him in prison for that. Mm-hmm. And the Supreme Court knocked it down 9-0. So here's a clear-cut case of, all right, we're going to drop this case against Eric Adams. The burden of proof is not there. The case is weak. And they did say that in their reasons. But the first thing that they said was because they're dropping this because it was political, which is a much harder thing to actually prove, as is easy for us to say. And the second thing they said is because we need his help on illegal immigration in New York. Which is not a legal reason, a really good reason to drop a case against someone. Right. It might actually, it's a very good reason to drop a case against someone, but it's not a good thing to say because, and these lawyers know, anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. So that's an example of they're going to get bogged down on that in court. They're going to have to explain that, whereas it would have been very easy to explain the lack of evidence. And that's kind of the second thing that I was thinking about, because early DOJ trouble happened. Same U.S. Acting Attorney General, when they collected a list of all agents who'd worked on the January 6th case. Now, this is an important thing to do. The January 6th, the FBI was completely weaponized. People across the Bureau, people I know, were taken off of important cases that they were working on, saying all resources on J6, all resources. And there were violent perps there and con men and liars. Right. Some of them are still floating around the ecosystem. They were also raiding grandmothers and raiding people who trespass and seizing Lego sets and all this completely insane stuff. But any one of these things that feeds into the left has very simple narratives because they have very simple minds on a lot of things. It's like you're either Hitler or you're Nixon or you're a Confederate. And sometimes you can blend all three together, but that's how they see the world because they don't know a lot of history. And you don't want to feed into that. So when you ask for a list of all FBI agents who crossed you politically, that kind of feeds into the Nixon, Mecca, Hitler, Confederate, and they start to freak out. There's responsible ways to do all of this stuff because all of this stuff is important. Like order review. I would like to know what went wrong in the J6 investigation and what resources were used. How did the federal government deploy resources? Where did we take people off of cases? And guess what? In that big trove of that big bear hug of data, you're going to get a list of every agent who did everything, because those are resources, and you don't feed in. So these are all good moves. These are bold moves. You're going to make mistakes when you have as many bold moves as you're making, but just also don't get too caught up, because you will have to answer for a lot of this stuff in court in the coming months and years. So I think basically the move fast and break thing ethos, which has been so great and so successfully deployed here, is good. But Republicans ought to take a card from Teddy Roosevelt's speak softly and carry a big stick.
So dive a little bit more into what the principle is that you're suggesting moving forward. If you're going to unite these different messaging fails, is it just the lacking the elegance of leaving out what you don't need to say?
Yes, leave out what you don't need to say. Just like you would do if you're ever talking to a police officer, an investigator, the FBI. Don't talk to the FBI. You will go to prison. That's the number one rule in D.C. is the FBI is like, we want to clear some things up. You're going to prison. So just don't say a word. But in general, the more you say, the more trouble you get in. You don't need to. I mean, the left was so capable of doing so much over so many years. Take lessons from them. By until the very end, not saying what they were doing. It wasn't until since Barack Obama, since the second coming of their Messiah, did they actually start saying what they meant. When you started to see AOC coming out and saying the Green Deal is about economics, not climate, they started to be open. Then you defeat them. Republicans should take a lesson from that and just say we're about law and order.
Yes, it sounds like the flip side of that is what you do say is extremely important, and we've been talking about that a little bit. So. It's how you frame this. Like you just mentioned, the list of all the FBI agents who worked on January 6th. Of course, a lot of them were just ordered to. I mean, it's like how huge percentage of the entire agency, right?
6,000 agents.
So yes, framing that in the way you said, this is about justice. This is about law and order. This is what we're trying to accomplish. And saying that, I think, is really important and goes to what you're saying, because then you at least the left's going to have their narrative anyway. But if you drop out the sorts of things you're describing that you don't need to say, and then you frame it the right way as to why you're doing it, then let them have at it.
Exactly.
I want to look at the man himself, though, right? Donald Trump, because in his first term, the man could be, tweeting out in the middle of the night, and it would dominate the entire news cycle for that day. And you're like, this is just like stream of consciousness Donald Trump
God
at 3 a.m. Well, this time around, dare I say, we've seen some restraint from Donald Trump. Again, we had the Napoleon stuff. He has some fun still, whatever. But this isn't just Donald Trump making news with every single post on True Social these days.
Right. This is Donald Trump, elder statesman.
Who thought we would get there?
Can you believe it? This is Donald Trump, where you've got the founding editor of Politico coming out and saying he is the most consequential political figure of our generation. He is someone who is going to define it. He is a once-in-a-lifetime political talent. You know what's funny about the tweeting? One, I'm sure you guys get this because you do politics, but my friends and parents are like, hey, could you please tell Donald Trump to tweet less? So, well, one, he hasn't asked me about that. I appreciate the access you think I have.
Yes.
And everyone's asked him to do that. And he's not going to do it. Old dogs don't change their tricks. Don't learn new
People
tricks.
have been asking him to do that for a long time.
I mean, Bill Barr told me a story once of going into a biker's bar, goes into a fireman's bar, goes in, and you see this guy with a Mama Never Loved Me tattoo, like, love the president, love what he's doing. Could you get him to tweet a little less? So everyone loves it. It's like the most entertaining aspect of his first term was the incredible tweets, probably peaked with Joe and Mika. But it did kind of pull back. And this is part about being quiet sometimes. Governing soundly while being quiet. And walking in slow motion videos to your helicopter with your black trench coat and your red tie, looking presidential. So much, and he understands this, so much of being a politician is show. So much of the presidency is pomp and circumstance. So much circumstances. So much is the bully pulpit, looking the part. That's what Americans want. He knows he wants that in his cabinet members, and he's doing it a lot more in his messaging and how he acts. And I'm here for it. Of course, we got a long time left.
Well, when you do talk to Donald Trump, if you could ask him what the whole Kofefi thing was, if you could just get to the bottom of that, we'd all appreciate that.
One of my all-time favorites. Yeah. Well, first off, when you go back to this, because it's wild how X, Twitter, has been such an intrinsic part of Donald Trump's rise, fall, and comeback. And when he started, everyone said he shouldn't be tweeting. But of course, that's only at least half true, if not mostly wrong.
Mostly wrong, I think.
He had to claw his way into power. And as he suggested, he had the incredible power of every time he tweet, he has this way of just going over the line in his opponent's head, just enough so they freak out and then overextend themselves attacking him. And he can just command the media. So then they decide, we have to cut him off of all of this, right? We have to just take away his account. He's not on X anymore. But then when he became
more powerful than I could ever imagine.
Yes, but then when he comes back,
he became more powerful than the Emperor of Rome.
Yes, now you see the judicious use of this power, and it's remarkable to behold. But think also about why he doesn't have to say all the things on Twitter anymore. There's an entire ecosystem, and the guy who owns the platform, kind of saying things for him,
and they're doing this stuff for him. One of the great things about the interview that I saw with Elon Musk and Donald Trump was that he said when you do an executive order, doesn't mean that they get followed. Yeah. And I don't think he knew that at first.
Yes.
I think a lot of people who hadn't been in D.C. for a long time didn't know that these are basically glorified press releases, and that's all. And now they're being acted. It doesn't need to be acted out. And I tell you, it's sparing me some sleep because I do remember he wakes up early. In the first term, back when I was a bachelor, probably staying up too late in the first place, I had notifications set for his Twitter. And starting at 5:30 in the morning, it'd be bzz, bzz, and I'm sitting there next to my phone, I'm like, what is the president up to? Sometimes it's a pretty wild morning.
I want to get your take on Caroline Leavitt, right? The White House press secretary. She's been doing a really good job. She's the youngest, I believe, to ever do so. She's 27 years old, out there and just wheeling and dealing with the media and making them look like fools almost every single day.
She's such an impressive force. She's fallen right into it. When she first walked out at the podium, that first press conference, I remember you could see a little bit of nervousness in her. And then I think you realize maybe J.D. Vance gave her the pep talk. You're smarter than these people. They may be older than you. They may have more experience than you. But one of the big secrets of Washington, best kept secrets, is how stupid everyone is. Like, people notice this in their own jobs. Everyone, whether you're in an office or work in a garage, there's always someone you work with who's been promoted who shouldn't have been. But that doesn't change no matter what level of power you're at. You can get to the top of the Pentagon, the top of the Senate and the House, and you'll still see that person who just succeeds despite being stupid and bad. And so if you have, it gives you that confidence. Like maybe like everyone puts on their pants one leg at a time in the morning. Gives you that confidence to go out there and to walk into the lion's den, and it's been rewarded because you stick to message and you do good. And I think at the same time, the press is also backed away from some of the full WWE matches they used to have, screaming at the president. My favorite was Caitlin Collins screaming at Donald Trump about Russia while he did Easter egg hunts with children on the lawn. It's like, you people are demented. And it looks so bad on them that they got rid of, what's his name? I've already forgotten, from CNN. And I think they've dialed it back. And that leads to more constructive conversation.
Don't you think there's a breath of fresh air aspect to this that is almost nonpartisan, given the dynamic of the last press secretary, and the way that she responded to questions, which is, I'll get back to you.
I'll circle back.
Look, I'm going to circle back after I go through my binder. Binder's full of circle backs. And here you have someone who is just able to, it's like going back to the campaign. You have people who are able to talk off the cuff and talk about stuff and give answers to things. And the answers happen to be on the right side of the truth, I think, most of the time. And so all of a sudden, it feels like, morning in America. It feels like the sun is shining in the White House again every time she talks.
And she has the added benefit of having watched multiple press secretaries for Donald Trump. I mean, originally, of course, you had Spicer going out there who's like, Trump wants me to throw chairs at the press and fight to the death at anything he's ever tweeted. And then you had kind of a change. And I think my favorites, of course, Huckabee Sanders was phenomenal. She, what blew my mind, she always gave those monotone answers. I always wondered, does she read books to her children that way? Same voice. And then one day, also at an Easter egg roll, she was reading children's books, and she does. She uses it. There's no voices. There's no. And
it's just Sarah.
I think my favorite was probably what's her name, Kellyanne.
Kellyanne Conway
at the end, who. Kayleigh McEnany, excuse me, was my favorite of the press secretaries because she kind of combined them both, a no-nonsense and a go-after, and it obviously made the president happy. So that's, I think, where Caroline Leavitt has watched these people and learned from them. Well, she must have been a teenager when these guys were on the TV for that, and learned from them what works best, how, and also how to be a press secretary for a guy who has more press relationships than anyone in the comms office. How to be the press secretary for someone who's going to not run his next tweet by you. It's pretty difficult work, and you can learn from who succeeded and who failed.
When we look at the communications aspect of the White House, the other big thing that everybody wanted to deal with is the border. So when we come back, our next guest will tell us how leftist organizations are helping illegals evade immigration enforcement right after this. And this part of the show is brought to you by The Cover-Up. Our friend Matt Kibbe, he has this series for us on BlazeTV, and episode 4 is out now. Dr. Richard Ebright is the featured guest on this episode, and everybody in the American public really found out about Anthony Fauci back in the COVID era, but Dr. Ebright found him back in 2001 with the anthrax scare. And so The Cover-Up, it goes through and exposes all the truth and how they went back and recreated the 1918 Spanish flu all the way through COVID-19. You don't want to miss it. Episode 4 is out now, right now on BlazeTV. And you can go ahead and save for your BlazeTV subscription at FauciCoverup.com/mandate and use the code SMOKINGGUN for $30 off your subscription. It's FauciCoverup.com/mandate. Use code SMOKINGGUN for $30 off your subscription. One of the biggest stories in the Biden administration was how NGOs were helping to facilitate illegal immigration. And now that Trump is in office, have things changed? Well, there's still an NGO in Arizona right now, and this is uncovered by the Heritage Oversight Project, that is still telling illegal immigrants to lie to law enforcement. So what can be done, and what is the latest that's going on? Mike Howell is the executive director of the Heritage Oversight Project, and he joins us right now to discuss all of this. So what did you find in Arizona?
So out in Arizona, there's this nonprofit. It's run by some Presbyterian church. It's basically a place for illegals to come, congregate, and get jobs. They farm out illegals for jobs to people who want to hire them for either like painting, construction, what have you. So in this little center, they had an official who was involved with the Mexican consulate. So the country of Mexico's connected representatives in the United States come by and coach the illegals on how to evade deportation, instructing them to lie to ICE. For instance, one of the quips she had was, if an ICE agent shows up and says, hey, are you working for this company? Just say you're a volunteer. So they're really thinking about these like legal ways to beat it back. And I think this means that the state of Mexico and their representatives in the U.S. need to get a hard look from the Trump administration. Why are we letting this foreign interference happen in our country with another country's flag hanging over it?
So where's the line here? Because, I mean, Catholic Charities seems to have kind of carefully walked the line where they've put out a video informing people of their rights where they'd be questioned. But it seems like telling you to lie to law enforcement, I don't know, that's not really illegal, I suppose, but it seems to be skirting it. Where does the line draw when it comes to actually obstructing the law and something that can be investigated by DOJ versus advising people as to how to respond to a ticket or questioning?
Yeah, so some things that are clearly across the line, and this was flagged by Pam Bondi. Her first day in office, she issued a memoranda that basically said, we're going to start enforcing these immigration-related criminal statutes. Things like harboring illegals, providing for their transportation, actually impeding and obstructing ICE. And so this is going to come into play. A lot of these organizations, and we got videos coming out, we'll show the whole world, are telling ICE they cannot enter and things like that. So what happens when ICE goes into these places and actually are refused entry by these nonprofits? And that's going to happen soon. Right now we're at this stage.
Sanctuary,
yeah. They literally think the Hunchback of Notre Dame movie is real, where you can just yell sanctuary and no one's allowed to come in.
The Presbyterians have churches.
Yeah, that was also a surprise.
So homeless shelter now. We're coming in.
Shots fired.
But this is billions of dollars flying around the country. And one last thing, the USCCB, the Catholic bishops, they're getting the best legal advice money can buy, and they're getting it for free from Gibson Dunn, one of these law firms that'll come into Republican offices and be like, hey, we're on your side. No, they're not. They're suing Trump again.
I think one of the most interesting things that you've been working on recently is this secret resistance blue state project. Tell us about that.
So a couple days after the election, all these state AGs got together and signed an agreement, basically a litigation agreement. They said, hey, we're going at this together, and the very first thing we're going to do, after getting blown out, shellacked in the election, it's not gas and groceries, it's not we're going to get serious about crime, it's not addressing anything that got them swept. It was birthright citizenship. So all of them got together, signed this pact, said we are going, as soon as Trump takes office, we're going to be ready, we're going to sue him on birthright citizenship. Why? Why birthright citizenship? Because they're trying to preserve the political gains of the Biden border crisis. Think about it. 10 million people came in. They're going to have some kids. The Dems' whole game plan is to turn them into voters. So the matter of utmost priority was birthright, not anything that is actually politically viable or they can sell to common sense Americans. It's just that it's further confirmation that the border crisis and immigration is just about adding new voters.
So I'm old enough to remember the Gang of Eight and the Gang of Six and all the Republicans who were like absolutely terrified. Old enough to remember Jeb Bush's immigration is an act of love and the GOP being completely afraid of this. Birthright citizenship seems as baked into this as Emma Lazarus's Constitution and Fightful Goes West, an American Tale. This is a part of the American story. So
Let's not bring Fievel into it. Come on, let's not bring Fievel into it.
For the second time on this show, I'm actually pretty impressed, Bedford.
It shows my age, right?
Yeah.
But is this actually going to change? Are they going to? Is this just never actually been seriously constitutionally questioned before until now? And if that's the case, then could birthright citizenship be struck down?
I absolutely think it will be struck down. We are in the perfect environment. First, politically speaking, and let's not pretend the Supreme Court's not a political animal. These judges, especially Chief Justice Roberts, they care about what people say at the country club, right? If you approached the birthright citizenship question 10 years ago, you probably would have had that kind of Jeb Bush reaction or the Gang of Eight reaction. Right now, all of these things, birthright citizenship, mass deportation, complete border security, they fit squarely in the common sense arena. And that's because everybody is up to the joke, or onto the joke now, that the left used border and immigration for the purposes of political change, to get people into the country to vote for them. That was made abundantly clear in the border crisis. Two, on the legal front, the White House has put a lot of thought into how they're going about this. What they're doing is essentially structured to get around some of the more, articulated arguments, particularly from a judge named Judge Ho, who has come out and, a lot of people say maybe he can be on the Supreme Court one day. But he has, kind of the right standard bearer of why birthright citizenship can't be changed. And so they've carefully constructed the legal argument to address his concerns, which is why you're not seeing a retroactive, we're going to take away birthright citizenship for everyone who's already got it, which I would have done, and I think, is a principally right thing to do. But they're narrowly tailoring it. And so the old decision in Wong v. Kim Ark is basically like the kid of a Chinese legal resident. They count. Here, the application is factually different. It's the children of a ton of illegal aliens right after a border crisis. And it's the phrase subject to the jurisdiction thereof, I think, is going to be heavily litigated. And the more you see these arguments progress and advance around that factual pattern, everyone's like, yeah, these illegal aliens aren't subject to the jurisdiction of the U.S. They have no political allegiance.
All right, let's stick with non-citizens because I know that Oversight Project has something that you've done an investigation on for the military-aged men that aren't citizens in the country. Break that down for us.
All right, I love this one that our team came up with. Selective service. We're all registered, right? No one's going to jail here. You got to fill out your card. If you're between 18 and 26.
Was I supposed to do that?
I got you. Yeah, I got you.
Thanks.
So, selective service. It's about mandatory registration for every male in the United States in that age range. Every male. That includes illegal alien males. Do you think that the illegal aliens have been registering for the selective service? No. I know they haven't, because if they had, during the biggest border crisis in history, the biggest surge of military-age males in history, there would have been a spike in the selective service registrations, right? There's not. We got the data. They're only drawing it from the legal sources of immigration, USCIS, nothing from ICE, nothing from CBP. So what does that mean? That means all of them are subject to enhanced criminal penalties. They can go to jail for about 5 years, $250,000 in fines. What does that really mean? As people on Capitol Hill say, I only want to deport the criminal illegal aliens. That's all I want to do. I don't like the Trump mandate. I just want to do the worst of the worst. That'll be the talk point. Well, guess what? Every military-aged male in the United States will be a criminal illegal alien if this statute is enforced. So go out, see if they've registered. If not, 5 years in prison or get out. It's an enhancement. It's an ability to wrap these people up with more criminal process. It gets other agencies involved, and I think it is a great way to expand the government's role in this beautiful mass deportation.
We've got a lot of Napoleon in the news lately between Donald Trump and birthright citizenship, and by the way, now you're in the Army. Surprise.
Yes. Yeah.
You're French now.
Sure, they might dig a ditch one day if we need it, but they don't get guns.
Get in, we're going to Russia.
What's really important about these particular arguments, or like you said, the narrow birthright argument, and this one when it comes to selective service, is that it starts to educate people's minds. It starts to get them to think about the reality that is here on the ground when it comes to illegal immigrants all over the place throughout the country. It really helps. It's a concrete picture, right? Because the other side has an abstract picture. That's very much like the globalist sort of, we love everybody, you have to love everybody. Right, and this is specific and concrete. So I think what you said about the Supreme Court is well said, that over time, this just makes sense in the 21st century. People can travel easily, birthright citizenship, coming and magically becoming a citizen because of where you're born doesn't really make sense. Most countries don't do it. It makes even less sense now than it did 100 years ago. But what's so important about your work is that it's not just about like the direct change to me. It's also about educating people as we go, because people like these stories. It helps them to think about, right, how reality actually works. And, I wish politicians, the Trump administration is doing a good job of this now. Like, that was what was lacking in the past. I mean, you just think about this one. We've seen conservatives argue for small government for like decades, right? But in order to actually do that, you have to show people examples. They just did that in spades. It was like a crash course in media, like a media training. Like, this is how you prep the American mind for taking action,
I love that, and I appreciate it. I think this is a story-rich environment because of all the excesses we have seen from the left, particularly over the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. And they invoke the central principles that I think we all most care about. Like when we talk about selective service or birthright, we're talking about what it means to be a citizen, and like your obligations and the benefits and rights that are conferred in exchange. And when you start speaking in those terms, you just further move out this concept of illegal immigration being a passable and acceptable thing. And furthermore, the left, the reason they were able to scare the right for so long, and many of our elected leaders are still scared, is they racialize the issue. All of them. They don't want to be called racist. If you support border security and immigration enforcement,
it's the scariest thing for a Republican
it's
to be called.
Yeah.
Where's Senator Steve King?
It's the worst thing in the world. He's, God bless Steve King. But yeah, now that they've lost the control of that argument, the race card's not working in this. Yeah. Now people are like, we don't need this anymore. And it doesn't matter what country you're from.
All right, Mike, bring us home with this one, because I see that you guys have big law out there in Gibson Dunn, and they're going out there, like many people right now, trying to sue President Trump, and they're jumping on board. So let us know what they're doing, trying to freeze these refugee funds.
We should know Gibson Dunn, traditionally known back in the day as a right-leaning big law firm.
Mm-hmm. We need to do a better job on the right of canceling law firms and people who oppose the mandate and the agenda. And we don't do that nearly enough. A lot of people skate through these law firms, go on to get judgeships, prime postings. There should be a cost imposed for people who profit maximize and make a crap ton of money working in these places that are tearing down our movement and fighting against its advancement.
That's how you build it.
That's how you build it.
That's how Mitch McConnell built his influence network. You hire his people all throughout D.C. Do the opposite.
Right. And I can think of no better example. Of course, all big law is pretty bad, but Gibson Dunn, in my mind, has really been at the forefront of throwing their legal ammunition at hurting the right. So they sued Jim Jordan last Congress on behalf of New York, and so they just dropped all these lawyers in who were helping out in that as it related to the Trump prosecution. But now they threw 8 of their attorneys to represent the Catholic bishops to fight against Trump's freezing of refugee resettlement funds, quote unquote, the cash cow for this entire NGO thing. And so they're doing it for free. We asked the bishops pro bono. And so they also represented all the Gitmo detainees back in the day. Mm-hmm. So when are we going to wise up and say, we're not taking meetings with these people. Mm-hmm. We're not taking people who used to work there unless they sufficiently repent. Mm-hmm. So I'm sick of it, and we're going to keep calling it out.
So real quick, we got you right here in the room here in Washington, D.C. Tell us about the future of the Oversight Project. Seems like you've been doing a lot of good work. What's this year going to look like?
I appreciate that. So there are going to be some strategic structural changes coming down the pike for the very real reason that we already know what this resistance is going to look like. Mm-hmm. It's going to be let out in the states. You're going to have all these people think they're running for president in 2028, Pritzker, Newsom, etc. California just set aside like $50 million or something to litigate against Trump. That will be this source of agitation and resistance. So we spent the last few years beating up, Biden, which was just elder abuse, is the easiest thing anyone could ever do. I mean, this document's just...
I always sort of feel bad.
He was just so bad. It wasn't hard investigating Joe Biden. We're going to go move this puppy to the states. All of our lawyers, our investigators, and state partnerships, we're going to be the counter-resistance to those fights. And in addition to those states, the nonprofits. Here in D.C., it's about seeing through the mandate. This is a major de-weaponization event that's going to occur. With Kash Patel, the FBI, and Pam Bondi up at DOJ, we need to make sure the mandate is executed. So we're going to help them do that to the extent possible and get out all of the things that the Biden administration, held back. Because history should not look fondly on Joe Biden. We're going to figure out who was running the White House the last 4 years. We're gonna tie and put a bow on a lot of these stories.
Go follow the Oversight Project. They are going to have a lot of good work coming up this year. Mike, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Bedford mentioned Mitch McConnell. We'll round out the show right after this. Well, I don't know if anybody is going to be really sad about this news that we're going to have to break, but Mitch McConnell has decided to announce on his 83rd birthday that he will not be seeking re-election in 2026. You guys, I don't know if we need a party, if we need to pop some champagne, if we need a moment of silence. I don't know how to really react to this, but it says here that he is the longest serving Senate party leader, right? And of course now it's a new era already with Thune taking over as Senate Majority Leader, but now Mitch McConnell, he's been wheeled in to a lot of these Senate confirmation hearing votes. He will no longer be here in just a few short years. We still have to deal with him.
Don't rush through them. Those
I
are
know.
Trump years. Those are important years. Every minute, take as long as you want. I think that's a reason. I don't think this was preordained. If Mitch McConnell had been able to exercise his influence the way he anticipated, I think that he probably would not be resigning. He would not resigning, but not running. He'd be coming back and running again. He's seen his allies picked apart one by one on Twitter and attacked by the president. He's seen the vice president coming down on people who are attacking the defense picks. He's seen people kind of melt away, and that power and intimidation and respect that he had, he's suddenly become kind of a backbencher. He's not a leader of the resistance. He's an old man in the back seats yelling that he wishes he had better seats or something. So when Kash Patel is confirmed and he expected to vote against, I have to check all the vote counts. That's just another time he's been steamrolled. So why stick around? But if he had been successful in old Washington, he would have been successful. Then we would have Senator McConnell probably dying at lunch in the Senate cafeteria in 12 years.
It's almost as if these people are always pry the power out of my cold, dead hands. But in this case, a new resurgent...
The Politburo.
Yes, a new resurgent right is looking at Mitch McConnell going, okay, we will.
It must be shocking for someone who had as much power and influence and fear and intimidation in this town and control of money for it to just suddenly be gone.
Protest votes, man, that's what he's got right now.
It's amazing. And I'm actually, all of my brain power right now is kind of focused on trying to figure out how to get a Fern Gully reference into it. So
Okay, well...
I haven't yet figured it out.
Going after Fern Gully is fine, but and I know why you're going after Fava Goes West. But
An American Tale is a great film.
But it is very hurtful, because these were I don't want to go there,
There were cats in
I don't
America,
want to do the analysis that some based anon probably has already done about how these movies were actually part of propaganda. No. Fern Gully, though,
Fern Gully was a clear propaganda.
We all knew that one. That's
some-
clear cut. They aren't hiding that at all. And I think that's one of the things that the MAGA movement is trying to do right now. They're going through and they're saying, this is who we are. We're not going to hide it. And you see the coalition that is building here in Washington, D.C. right now, which is taking the power away from people like Mitch McConnell. And it's like, I never thought in my adult life that we would actually see this successful transition of power, not even just from the Democrats and the Republicans, but an actual party that is going to stand up against a uniparty. There are people that are coming together right now that are at least trying to do this. Because if we look at DOGE and we start off and we say, oh, these are great things that are happening in the country right now. Well, we didn't just get here with these billions of dollars going to insert NGO here. The Republicans also allowed that to happen
Every step of the way.
and you have to unite those two things together, because it's so important not to just let the Republicans off the hook on this, but also look at it and say, okay, maybe we can take that next step forward.
It's the end of controlled opposition. It's the actual real opposition party. And even the Republicans are in control, they're still the opposition because they're completely outnumbered, completely outgunned. All of the NGOs are getting sued by the Catholic Church, which is kind of amazing and really upsetting and disappointing, but I guess it's not that shocking. I mean, I know people who are inside the U.S. Catholic Conference of Bishops, and the people who are attracted to those jobs, generally speaking, are left-wing activists who want to change the world for their left-wing ideals. And everything for them, whether it's the church or the Senate or the protest movement, or is a vehicle for pushing, or music. Remember, I mean, this goes way back. I mean, Bob Dylan was disliked and hated a lot. The Newport Music Festival, everyone talks about them unplugging it because of his electric guitar, but they were just sick of the fact that he wouldn't get political with them.
Yeah.
He wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
He didn't really care. He didn't really understand. It was not his thing. There's always been that peer pressure, and that's starting to break. And we're lucky the way the youth is turning, because it could have gotten dark there. I remember talking to other parents who had kids who were a little older than mine, at the beginning of when these kids were going to school and they were being told being a male is bad. Being a white is bad. America is bad. But when you do that sort of thing, you push kids to question authority in ways that can be very unhealthy. And the internet, 4chan, is quick to provide some alternatives, which are actually not good alternatives, but it is a massive form of rebellion. And since the internet now records everything you say, I'm like, oh man, these kids are going to start posting racist things. They're going to start posting. They're never going to get a job. But it turns out the youth were smarter than that. They didn't. They just laughed at it. Donald Trump, Elon Musk, dark MAGA gave them an outlet. And really the only person who lost his mind was Kanye. Everyone else, it seems to have repented. He's no longer a Nazi after consideration. But everyone else kind of kept it going. They had outlets. They had people. They had leaders. They had people who were Glenn Beck, everything, who were talking about what they were giving voice to them. So they weren't completely alone. And now they might be winning. Yes. They are.
Yes. Yeah. And a youth movement, because I think that they just see reality for what it is. So there's no baggage, right, from the past, from, we say, uniparty or whatever. They're just
unburdened by what has been.
They are unburdened completely by what has been. And they're looking around going, this is a complete crap show. Like, what are we going to do? Why are people talking to me like this? And they understand, and they see the world in a different framework that's just, it is unburdened by the baggage of the past. Now, we should say, I think this is an important point. Donald Trump is the driving force behind everything that we're talking about. And the reason that Republicans, quote unquote, are actually doing things, right? Who's the real Republican? Mitch McConnell or Donald Trump? I mean, it depends on how you view the Republican Party. The Republican Party was essentially rejected, in my mind, by the American people when Donald Trump became the nominee. That was the American people going, after decades of you guys, we reject you and we take this guy. And so now you have what is in effect an entirely new
Bush
party.
and Bob Dole didn't get him going?
Exactly.
No, they weren't excited. I don't know why. Losing didn't get them excited either.
No.
But now you have something that's completely different. I mean, I don't know what to call it, but it's right wing, and it is the new Republican Party, and it is ascendant, and it's real, and it's here, and it's people who are actually trying to do things.
And it's moved beyond reactionary.
Yes,
Which is great.
Yes,
I'm writing about this. A preview for the Beltway Brief tomorrow.
Very important.
Is why the old tricks that the Uniparty would do, which is basically chanting MAGA while they did whatever they wanted to, aren't working anymore.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you see the Republican parties and the Bushes, and they used to have total control, right? Not anymore. And now that we feel the sense of freedom, and you can feel this renewed energy that is there on the right, good luck trying to get the toothpaste back in the tube here, where we're at this point now, that little bit of hope and that little bit of, we can actually do things.
Yes.
Things can actually happen the way that we see the world. At this point, you don't go back from that.
Well,
hopefully.
Not to get your whole column on the table before you got it out there, but I mean,
I'll just repeat
it's not.
myself.
It's
That's
not.
fine.
When
60
you say
seconds.
good things, you should always repeat yourself. It's not reactionary because there's actually a plan of things that people want to get done.
Yeah.
It turns
they
out
have
Russ
goals.
Voda wrote about it in a little-known magazine, The American Mind.
I've heard of that one.
Oh, have you?
All right. Good day here in Washington, D.C. We'll be back here again tomorrow. Chris Bedford may or may not be going through and letting us show us some of the town tonight. I don't know. We'll see.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We're doing the town.
Okay. You've heard it here first. Hopefully everybody will behave themselves and we'll look at it.
No deal. No deal.
No deal. Okay. Just me. It'll be me. It'll be me behaving myself with these two gentlemen by my side. It'll be a fun one, and we'll be back here to break it all down for you from our nation's capital tomorrow night. Thanks for watching, everybody.